Rudo is an ugly, broke, and friendless boy who spends most of his time rummaging through the trash in the rich part of town. One day, he notices a rich lady discard a trash bag with a perfectly good doll in it, and he wants it. So he heads down to the trash collection site and sneaks into one of the garbage rooms so he can start looking for any valuables. However, he was a bit too sloppy with his approach because he gets spotted by one of the guards, and the people here must take their trash very seriously because the guard immediately runs in there and draws his gun on Rudo. Only authorized personnel are allowed to be in here, and once he realizes that Rudo is a trash raider, the guard sounds the alarm to call for reinforcements. Rudo doesn't plan to stick around any longer, so he jumps into the trash chute and climbs his way back up so he can get out of here, but the lockdown sequence has already been initiated, so just as he was about to escape, the front gate gets sealed off. The guards eventually catch up to Rudo, and as soon as they have a clear line of sight, they open fire without hesitation. All because they don't want him looking through their trash. As the shots are heading straight for Rudo, he locks in and begins moving so fast that he is able to dodge the bullets point blank. But keep in mind, the guards had no idea he could move fast enough to dodge bullets, so they genuinely wanted to kill him over trash. Rudo manages to slip through one of the open doors and runs out into the loading area while the guards continue shooting at him. At one point, he gets grazed on the arm by a bullet, but he is still able to make it over the wall to escape the trash collection compound. The guard continues chasing after him, but Rudo manages to stay hidden in the sewer system until the coast is clear, but he doesn't understand why they are willing to go so far to stop him from going through the trash when he isn't hurting anyone. Morning comes and people all over the city have heard the news of the recent trash raid, and they are appalled at the idea of the dirty tribesfolk going through the stuff they've thrown away. In this city, the people are divided into two sections: the city dwellers who live in the clean and pristine part of town, and then there's the tribesfolk who live in the filthy part of town. The news of the trash raid is a hot topic here as well, but everyone in this part of town already knows Rudo must have been behind it, mostly because he is currently fixing up all the junk he collected last night. A few moments later, Rudo is confronted by his friend Chua, and she yells at him for going trash raiding again. The city folk are really strict about their trash management, so there's no telling what they'd do to Rudo if they ever caught him in the act. Rudo understands that what he did was risky, but he doesn't think it's fair how the rich and wealthy are always throwing away things that are still perfectly usable. Plus, selling the fixed junk helps him cover his living expenses out here. Then, a group of guys show up, and they immediately start insulting Rudo unprovoked. They tell Chua that she shouldn't hang around a loser like him so much, and Rudo is doing his best to stay calm, but they keep pushing his limits. One of them even knocks over the lantern that Rudo was fixing and tells him no one is ever going to buy something that was touched by Rudo's filthy hands. After all, they say he's the son of a homicidal maniac. Rudo has been trying to ignore their insults for a while now, but that last comment about his father really struck a nerve with him. The boys keep talking and explain that these slums were originally created as a prison for criminals, and now as the children of those criminals, all of them have to be on their best behavior in hopes of redeeming themselves and being allowed to rejoin the city. But people like Rudo's father screwed up for everyone by going on a killing spree. The boy has been talking a lot of shit for someone within drop-kicking range, and that last statement officially crossed the line, so Rudo stares at him with a look that means he's about to crash out. Seeing Rudo look at them with such animosity scares them so bad that they realize it'd be a bad idea to keep messing with him, so they all just slowly walk away. Once they are gone, Rudo silently goes to pick up the lantern that they kicked over since he's used to getting ridiculed for no reason, but to his surprise, Chua is still standing by his side. She even tells him she believes he's a good person, and that's the nicest thing anyone has ever said to him, so he doesn't know how to react. Just then, Chua notices the toy that Rudo fixed up, and she absolutely loves it. She's impressed that Rudo was able to find something so cute in the trash and fix it up. The whole reason Rudo went after the doll in the first place was to give it to Chua as a present, so he is happy to hear that she likes it, but before he could explain that it's a gift, Chua's mother shows up and tells her it's time to go home. Chua gets up and says goodbye to Rudo before walking home with her mother, and Rudo is disappointed that he missed his chance to confess. After that, Rudo heads home too, but as soon as he gets inside, he finds Recto standing there with a wide smile on his face. He was spying on Rudo earlier, so he looks him dead in the eyes and repeats Rudo's failed confession word for word. Rudo gets flustered and yells that spying on his private moments isn't cool, but that aside, Recto wants to talk about that little trash raid stunt Rudo pulled last night. Recto admits that they are poor, but they aren't poor enough for Rudo to need to risk his life looking for valuable junk. Rudo insists that it's not that risky since he has never been caught before, but Recto points out that Rudo was spotted last night and he nearly got captured. Recto understands that Rudo is only trying to pay him back for everything he has done for him since they aren't related by blood, but as far as Recto is concerned, Rudo is his son, so he doesn't need to pay him back for anything. Recto found Rudo abandoned as a baby and took him in as his own, and he has always known that Recto saw him as family, so it's not like he feels guilty or anything. He just wanted to show some respect by helping him out a little as family. Just then, Recto spots the wound on Rudo's arm and asks if he got shot yesterday. Rudo tries to deny it, but it's obvious that his arm is injured, so Recto tells him to roll up his sleeve so he can treat it. And while he's at it, he says he will change the bandages on Rudo's arm. Once he is done treating Rudo's wound, he reminds him to stay away from the trash site from now on because next time he might not be lucky enough to come out of it with minor injuries. Rudo assures Recto that he really is fine because compared to the wounds that his biological father left him with, a little scratch on his shoulder isn't a big deal. The mood shifts as soon as Rudo mentions his father because it's not a fun topic to discuss. In this city, major crimes are punished with an immediate death sentence and offenders are dropped into the pit without a second thought. Rudo's father was thrown into the pit for the crimes he committed, and Recto doesn't want the same to happen to Rudo, so he asks him to be more careful from now on. Rudo's hands have been pitch black for as long as he can remember, and as if that wasn't bad enough, he occasionally gets episodes of crippling pain from them. People have always looked at him with disdain upon seeing his injury, but Recto was different. He gave Rudo a set of gloves that helped manage the pain he felt, and Rudo has treasured them ever since. All that aside, Recto tells Rudo that he had better make a move on Chua soon, otherwise someone else might win her over before he gets the chance to confess, but Rudo really doesn't want to talk about that right now. But while Recto and Rudo are busy bickering inside, a mysterious masked man is standing outside and staring at their house ominously. The next morning, Rudo is trying to learn to smile since Recto told him it would make him more approachable, but after practicing for a few minutes, Rudo realizes he's just plain ugly, so no amount of smiling is going to help. However, he does still want to give Chua the doll, so he decides to head over to her house. On his way, he thinks about the pit and how it is considered a huge trash dump both literally and figuratively. All the city's trash is thrown in there, and anyone caught committing a crime and deemed useless to society ends up in there as well. Public executions are held like this fairly often, but Rudo has always wondered what actually happens when someone is sent down there. Just then, Chua happens to show up and she thinks it's awful how people get thrown into the pit all the time. From what she has heard, the slums were built on the edge of the city specifically to remind all the tribus folk that if they step out of line, then they'll be thrown in the pit without question. Everyone who lives here has no choice but to watch as more and more people get thrown in there, but Chaiwa really doesn't want that to happen to him. She understands that he doesn't agree with how the rich people waste perfectly good stuff, but if he continues putting himself in danger like that, then it will only be a matter of time before he gets caught. Rudo laughs a little because Recto said the same thing to him last night, and Chua, that's probably because Recto loves Rudo just as much as she does. Rudo continues laughing for a second, but then it dawns on him that Chua just said she loves him, and as soon as Chua realizes what she said, she gets flustered and starts trying to explain that she didn't mean it in a weird way. This is the best chance Rudo is ever going to get, so he holds out the doll and tells Chua that he got this for her because he thought she might like it. Chua is overjoyed by the thoughtful gift and tells Rudo that she'll treasure it forever, but this went way better than Rudo expected, so he isn't sure how to react right now. He eventually decides to run off before his ugly face makes Chua change her mind, and now that he has finally made progress, he wants to go home and tell Recto all about it. However, as he is running around the corner, he accidentally bumps into a bunch of guards from the inner city, and they barely even acknowledge his existence before walking past him like a piece of trash. Apostles showing up in the slums is never a good sign, but right now, Rudo couldn't care less about that because he needs to go brag to Recto about his love life. He eventually makes it home, but as soon as he opens the door, to his absolute horror, he finds the masked man with a sword plunged into Recto's chest. The masked man pauses for a moment out of surprise at Rudo's sudden appearance, but then he goes back to what he was doing and pushes the sword deeper into Recto's chest. Rudo refuses to let Recto die in front of him, so he tries fighting the masked man off, but in less than a second, he ends up slammed against the wall and barely able to move. He got beaten so badly that he doesn't even remember how it happened, and the masked man is barely even acknowledging Rudo as a threat. He is fairly certain that Recto won't survive now, so the masked man slowly gets up and begins walking out the door. Rudo doesn't want to let him get away, so he yells at the murderer to stop, but that doesn't work, so he tries mustering up as much strength as he can so he will be able to chase after him. However, he suddenly hears Recto trying to speak, and helping Recto takes priority over getting revenge right now, so Rudo rushes over to his side. He tries to assure Recto that he will get help, but there's not much that can be done when you've got a sword sticking out of your chest, so Recto grabs his shirt and tells him to get out of here as fast as he can. Rudo doesn't understand why Recto would say that, but a moment later he gets shot in the back by a taser and is pinned to the ground by the city guards. They accuse him of murdering Recto, and no matter how much Rudo tries to explain that he isn't the one who was responsible for this, they refuse to listen to him, and one of them even punches Rudo until he goes unconscious. By the time Rudo wakes up, he finds himself tied to the execution stand dangling over the pit, while an apostle condemns him for a crime he didn't commit. The people of the slums already didn't like Rudo, so none of them oppose his execution. But Rudo is left wondering how things could have ended up this way. He didn't do anything wrong, yet dozens of people are currently yelling for his execution. He looks out into the crowd, pleading for someone to believe that he is innocent, but all the faces he sees are looking at him with nothing but contempt. He then spots Choa, and she may be the only one who would ever believe in his innocence, so he tries calling out to her and explaining that he wasn't the one who killed Recto. He asks her to help find the real killer so he can prove his innocence, but Chuva cuts him off, and she says she was a fool to ever believe that someone like Rudo could be more than a filthy murderer, and now she wants nothing to do with him ever again. As Rudo watches Chuva walk away from him, he realizes that he is truly alone now, but then, just as he is about to be dropped, he sees a familiar face in the crowd. The face of the man who killed Recto, and in that moment, he swears to himself that he's going to kill that guy along with all the people who turned their backs on him. The next time Rudo opens his eyes, he finds himself laying in a pile of trash and obviously stinks, but he is more surprised that he's still alive down here since he thought the pit was supposed to be a death sentence. He looks up and sees vast expanses of wastelands as far as the eye can see, but then he hears a loud rumbling sound coming from behind him. And when he turns around to see the giant trash monster staring him down, he realizes this isn't just a regular pit. This is hell. Rudo starts running for his life, but the trash monster calls for backup, and within moments he is surrounded by two more of them. He is still struggling to believe what he's seeing because since when could giant piles of trash come to life and attack you? However, this situation is very real, and the human skull he finds on the ground shows him exactly what's going to happen to him if he doesn't act quickly. Just then, the trash pile below Rudo's feet gives way, so he falls to a lower level, and that fall really hurt. The wind was knocked out of his lungs when he hit the ground, but the air here smells worse than a moldy gym bag, so he can barely breathe. He realizes he needs to find somewhere to hide before the monsters get to him. But after looking around, there's literally nothing but trash here, so there's no safe place. Rudo is starting to lose hope and believes he's going to end up dying no matter what he does. But then he remembers what Recto had said to him before he died, and Rudo refuses to let himself die before he has made them all pay for what they did. The people who looked down on him as trash, the cowards that watched as he was thrown into the pit, and most of all, the bastard that killed Recto in cold blood. One of the trash monsters tries to sneak attack Rudo while he's mid-monologue, but he's filled with so much rage that he smacks the monster's head away with a metal pipe. Meanwhile, on a nearby trash pile, a man spots Rudo on the other side of the trash field, and he is curious about him. Rudo is doing his best to fight back against the monsters, but his metal pipe isn't doing much damage to their trash bodies, so he gets swatted away and bounces off the floor multiple times. Eventually, he gets his hands on a broken stop sign, so he chucks it at the trash monster and he manages to do some decent damage to it. But with all the toxic air here, Rudo can't keep fighting like this forever. The two trash monsters see that Rudo is struggling to get back up, so they both decide to charge at the same time. However, just before they could hit him, Rudo grabs a piece of sheet metal, and with it, he slices one of the trash monsters clean in half, resulting in a huge trash explosion. Rudo is relieved that he was able to take down the trash monster, but unfortunately, it's not over yet because another trash monster spawns right in front of him, and this one is much bigger than the others, so Rudo has no choice but to run for his life. The monster slams into the ground, and Rudo is sent flying before landing right in front of the man who was watching him. He is confused upon first seeing the man, but he still can't breathe properly with the stench in the air, so the man picks him up, kicks him across the floor for no reason, and then puts a gas mask on Rudo's face. At first, Rudo is mad, but then he realizes he can actually breathe now, so we should be grateful. He turns to the man and thanks him for his help, but he has a few questions about this place, like where they are, what those monsters are, and is everywhere else like this as well. All very valid questions, but the mysterious man just tells Rudo to shut his mouth and be quiet. Rudo doesn't understand why the man doesn't want to answer his questions, so he starts yelling that he needs answers. He just got tossed down here and has no idea what this place is, so he refuses to be quiet until the man gives him some answers. All Rudo's yelling pisses the man off, so he starts yelling back at him. He says this place is one of the many toxic dumps that spirits like Rudo created, and he would have explained that eventually, but Rudo couldn't keep his damn mouth shut, so now they've got to deal with those things again. The man explains that those are trash beasts, monsters made of trash that can't be harmed with normal weapons, and they react to sound. So Rudo's yelling basically sounded the dinner bell for all the trash beasts in the area. The trash beasts in this area are particularly bad, so the man was hoping to avoid drawing their attention, but it's too late for that now. Energy begins to flow from the man's arms into the umbrella he's holding, and right before Rudo's eyes, the umbrella changes its form. So as the trash monster attacks, the man uses the umbrella to shred it to pieces. Rudo is in disbelief at the fact that the man was able to destroy the trash monster so easily, but there are a lot more where that came from, so he's still got a lot of work ahead of him. The man prepares to charge, and within seconds, he's able to take down a dozen or so trash beasts like it's nothing. Rudo is amazed by what he has just witnessed, and he is curious as to why that umbrella is so powerful, because if he was able to do damage like that on his own, he could finally make all those jerks in the city regret what they did. One of the trash monsters begins vomiting up some putrid purple goo, and the man can tell that it's not a good idea to touch it, so he uses his umbrella to parry the spray before driving the umbrella straight through the monster's head. Once the man is done, he goes back over to Rudo to check on him, and he takes off his mask to introduce himself. He says his name is Engine and he is a cleaner, but he immediately regrets taking his mask off because the air still smells awful. Moments later, Rudo passes out from exhaustion because of all the damage he suffered earlier, and while he's unconscious, he recalls an old memory of his time with Recto. When Rudo was younger, he returned home one day covered in mud, so Recto asked him what happened, and he explains that he had been pushed into the dirt by some kids. All he did was tell them that objects are alive because if you take care of them for long enough, a soul will come and live in them. But the kids just laughed and started picking on him after that. Ruben learned that story from Recto, so he feels bad that repeating it got Rudo in trouble, because stories like those are usually just made up. But Recto does believe that objects can have souls. Rudo lights up after hearing this and asks if that means all the stuff in the room has a soul as well, and Recto says anything can have a soul. Even the gloves that Rudo is wearing can have a soul as long as he cherishes them. Rudo later wakes up and finds himself being dragged across the floor by Engine. He starts yelling demands to know why Engine chained him up, so Engine reminds Rudo that he's still a total stranger, and there's no way Engine is bringing a stranger back to base without taking some precautions first. Rudo starts squirming around a lot and tells Engine to let him go because he needs to get back to the city as soon as possible, but Engine tells him that it isn't possible right now. The place Rudo calls the city is called the Sphere down here, and it kind of moves around a lot in the sky, so it's difficult to keep track of where it is. There's also the fact that Rudo isn't able to fly, so he'd never be able to get back up there in the first place. There are other factors as well, but the point here is that for now, Rudo is stuck down here, so he should just stay quiet and deal with it. However, Rudo refuses to give up because nothing's going to stop him from getting revenge on those pricks in the sphere. Earlier, Engine said Rudo was stuck for now, meaning there must be some way to get up to the sphere after all, and Rudo wants to know what that is. He asks Engine to tell him everything there is to know about this place and how to leave, because he's not going to shut up until Engine fills him in. Engine is getting sick of all of Rudo's constant yelling, so he tells him that if he's so desperate to find out what kind of place the surface is, then he's going to get a first-hand lesson. Engine continues dragging Rudo until he eventually arrives at an old service station with 2 trucks out front. Engine then drops Rudo off and wishes him luck before leaving him there to fend for himself. Just then, Rudo spots 5 men staring at him, and they all seem astonished by the sight of him. They think the clothes on Rudo's body are strange, so they begin speculating that he might be a spirit, but just to be sure, they ask Rudo where he came from. Rudo tells them that he fell from the place they call the Sphere, and as soon as he says this, all the men take off their masks in surprise because they've never seen a living spirit before. They still find it hard to believe that a spirit managed to survive that kind of fall, but judging by the way Rudo's face looks, he's got to be telling the truth. Rudo doesn't like the fact that a bunch of random men are touching his face, so he pulls away, and the men apologize for being rude, but they don't see people like Rudo often, so they got a little excited. Anyway, the leader can see that Rudo must be uncomfortable in those chains, so he offers to change them for him, and Rudo thinks he is actually pretty nice, but unfortunately, things didn't end the way Rudo thought they would. He ends up chained up in the back of their truck instead, and the men start joking about how dumb it was for Rudo to trust them when he has no idea who they are. As the chains are tightened, the leader reminds the others to be careful with him because they wouldn't want to damage their latest product. Spirits fetch a high price around here, but it's mostly just spirit bodies that are sold. Eyes, fingers, and even spirit clothes go for a high price, but the leader never could have imagined that he would find a living spirit. He'd assure that Rudo must be wondering why people are willing to pay so much for spheroids, so he tells him that it's because all the people on the surface despise the spheroids. All they ever do is dump their trash on the people here. And it just keeps building and building until it turns the air into poison. It even creates monsters down here, so the spheroids are practically slaughtering the surface dwellers with all the trash they dump down here. So once the people here find out that Rudo is one of the spheroids, it's not going to be good for him. He may get tortured, torn apart, or maybe someone will even bust out the baby oil, but the leader doesn't care what happens to Rudo either way because he's going to make a lot of money selling him to the highest bidder. But before that, he wants to get a little payback of his own, so he starts shoving trash down Rudo's mouth. He thinks Rudo must have been living a sheltered life up in the sphere, so being forced to eat trash like this should break his spirit. But while he is shoving a piece of trash down Rudo's throat, Rudo bites down on his fingers and rips the flesh right off the bone. The leader jumps back in pain, but Rudo keeps chewing the flesh and even swallows. Back in the slums, Rudo was forced to eat trash like this all the time, so nothing has changed for him. Even the discrimination is the same here because no matter where Rudo goes, people will always look for a reason to treat him like garbage, and he's sick of it. He rips himself out of the chains, and right now, Rudo has lost all sense of reason, so the only thing in his mind is murder. Engine has been watching the whole thing unfold from a cliff nearby, and he is impressed by what he sees Rudo is capable of. Rudo recalls what Recto told him about how taking care of something long enough will grant it a soul, but as Rudo grabs the chain floating in front of him, it begins to glow red, shocking the scavengers. On the surface, there are special people like Engine who are able to give life to objects to draw out their full power, and Rudo is one of them. The chain he was holding transforms, so the other scavengers are cautious about attacking him. But the leader reminds them that even if Rudo is a giver, as long as they get that chain away from him, he won't be able to use his powers anymore. The scavengers manage to knock the chain out of Rudo's hand, but that doesn't stop him because Rudo just grabs a nearby tire instead and uses it to beat the crap out of all of them. The last one left is the leader, and there's nothing he can do to stop Rudo, so he resorts to insulting him over and over again. But that just makes him even angrier, so Rudo is about to end him on the spot, but at the last second, Engine comes down and stops him. Rudo finally snaps out of it, and the tire he was using crumbles to dust moments later. Rudo has no idea what just happened or how he did all that, but he has a feeling that it has something to do with his gloves. Engine apologizes for ditching Rudo here, but he had to see what Rudo is capable of, and now that he knows Rudo is a giver, he wants to offer him a deal. He will tell Rudo anything he wants to know, and in exchange, Rudo will have to come work with him and the rest of the cleaners. But after everything that has happened, Rudo is done trusting people, so he tells Engine nope. Anyway, Engine kidnaps Rudo. It was pretty easy considering how badly Rudo was hurt, so he took him to a doctor to have him patched up. While he's there, Engine informs one of his teammates that he has found a talented kid to join their team. Rudo yells that he never agreed to join Engine's team, but Engine tells him he doesn't really have a choice because he's definitely going to die out there without any help. The doctor starts yelling at Rudo as well and tells him it was beyond stupid to head into no man's land on his own. In fact, with all that toxic air that he inhaled, the doctor is surprised Rudo is even alive. He'd better be grateful Engine saved his dumb butt. Just looking at Rudo's face is starting to piss the doctor off, so he tells him to pay up and get out already. After that, Engine pays the doctor, and the two of them leave the office together. Rudo is genuinely grateful that Engine is helping him out so much, but he is serious about not being able to join Engine's team. He has to get back up to the sphere to get his revenge, so he doesn't have time to sit around here and collect trash or whatever it is that Engine's team does. Engine tells Rudo that he's free to go asking around for information on how to get back up to the sphere, but there are two things he should know first. One, literally everyone here hates spheroids just as much as those body sellers do, so if anyone finds out that Rudo is one of them, he's toast. And two, this isn't the kind of place where you can get information for free, so asking around won't do much good for Rudo. Inside one of the trash cities, Engine buys Rudo some real food while they sit at a nearby table, and Rudo is loving the burger. He is a little surprised since he always imagined the pit being nothing but trash. However, now that he has seen it for himself, this place just looks like a regular city with trash everywhere. Engine decides to give Rudo a little info about this place, so he starts explaining how trash can often come with a mix of emotional power called anama. This anama sometimes gathers into one large mass, which in turn gives rise to the trash beasts Rudo had to deal with. Trash beasts attack humans on sight, but they tend to stick around the dumping sites, so the people in the city don't have to deal with them often. But there is the occasional incident where a trash beast terrorizes a city. Furthermore, it's not easy to take out trash beasts, you need to destroy their cores. and that can only be done using special equipment like Enjin's umbrella or Rudo's gloves. It may seem like ordinary stuff, but given enough time and care, Anama will inhabit any object, making it an effective weapon against trash beasts. However, there are only a few people who are capable of drawing out the Anama in these vital instruments, givers, and Rudo just so happens to be one of them. Enjin tells Rudo that he is a cleaner who works for an organization of trash beast exterminators, and they need all the givers they can get, so he wants Rudo to come work with him. Rudo asks if he's really going to tell him how to get back to the sphere if he works with him, but about that, Enjin has no idea how to get to the sphere. He just lied earlier to make sure Rudo would pay attention to his pitch. Rudo is understandably pissed that Enjin lied to him, but Enjin says his boss is a lot more up to date on the things that happen here, so he probably know of a way for Rudo to return to the sphere. Rudo is frustrated that he now has to meet Enjin's boss just to maybe have a shot at getting back up to the sphere. A few moments later, Enjin gets a call, so he needs to go take care of some business real quick. But before he goes, he gives Rudo a bag of money and tells him he can do whatever he wants with it in the meantime. Rudo is shocked by Enjin's generosity and asks him if it's really alright for him to take this, but Enjin has no problem with it, especially since that's the money he earned by selling Rudo's spheric clothes. Rudo hadn't really thought about it before now, but his clothes are actually missing, and he's angry that Enjin would sell them without his permission. But in Enjin's defense, wearing spheric clothes around here would only draw unwanted attention, so he was actually doing Rudo a favor. Anyway, he walks off before Rudo gets a chance to yell at him, but while Rudo wasn't paying attention, a cat jumps down from one of the signboards and it snatches the money on the table before running away. Rudo isn't about to let himself get robbed by a cat, so he starts chasing it down the alley it ran into. The cat is really fast, so Rudo won't be able to catch it with his bare hands at this rate. To make things easier for himself, Rudo grabs a nearby stick to catch the cat, and while it does help him pin it to the ground, he failed to realize that the stick actually belongs to someone, and that someone is not happy. He accuses Rudo of robbing him, but Rudo has no idea what the guy is talking about since he doesn't remember stealing anything from him. Zanka tells Rudo that he's talking about the stick in his hand, but Rudo has no idea that a regular old stick could be so important to someone. Zanka grabs the stick out of Rudo's hands and tells him that it's not just an ordinary stick, and it's not something that you can steal without facing severe consequences, so Zanka activates the vital instrument and says he's going to teach Rudo a lesson in respect. He slams his stick into the ground in front of Rudo, and he warns him that even if he is a prodigy, he has no right to touch another man's stick. Rudo asks how Zanka knows about him, so Zanka explains that he's one of the cleaners, and Enjin already told him all about Rudo and asks Zanka to teach him a few things. Enjin seemed to have high hopes for Rudo, but Rudo is a long way away from living up to his potential, especially if he has to teach Rudo something as basic as don't steal from other people. Rudo tries telling him that he wasn't stealing the stick, he just needed to use it to catch the cat that stole his money, but Zanka isn't interested in listening to his excuses. He tells Rudo he must have had a terrible father if he thinks it's alright to take other people's property, but insulting Recto is crossing the line, so Rudo's eyes light up in rage. Just then, Rudo has a flashback to one of the life lessons he learned from Recto, and told him that people can't come to an understanding when you come at them angry, so sometimes cooling off a little and trying to understand things from their perspective can help settle things peacefully. Rudo decides to put that lesson into practice here, so he thinks about how things must look from Zanka's perspective. He is angry because he thinks Rudo tried to steal his precious stick, and Rudo can relate because he'd be just as mad if someone tried to steal his gloves from him, so he apologizes to Zanka for what he did. It turns out that the apology was super effective because Zanka deactivates his stick and tells Rudo he's willing to let it go. He also apologizes for threatening Rudo earlier, since even if he was upset, as Rudo's teacher, he should have tried to remain calm. Rudo is astonished by how easy it was to defuse the situation once he apologized, and Zanka seems like a whole new person now that he's not angry anymore. Zanka extends his hand to help Rudo up and asks him what his vital instrument is, so Rudo tells him that he's pretty sure it's his gloves, but he doesn't know how to activate them at will yet. Zanka starts giving Rudo a little explanation on how vital instruments work, but Rudo isn't paying attention because he's so focused on how different Zanka looks now that he's smiling. He wonders if this is what Recto was talking about when he said you look better with a smile on your face, and he wants to try it for himself. He's been practicing for a while, so he should be able to smile properly by now. Never mind, it's even worse than it was before. Zanka has no idea what he's looking at, but that definitely doesn't look like a smile, so he gets mad because he thinks Rudo is mocking him even though he was trying really hard to be nice. Rudo tries to explain that he really is just trying to smile, but it's really hard to believe him when his face looks like that. On top of that, Zanka really doesn't like Rudo's attitude regarding the work the cleaners do because they are out here every day, risking their lives to save others, but Rudo is probably just doing this for some stupid reason. Rudo has flashbacks to the final words Recto ever said to him about how he should change the world, and he is enraged that Zanka would call his goals stupid when he's trying to honor Recto's final wish. Zanka says he was really trying to keep an open mind about Rudo, but he just can't bring himself to get along with him. So he's done being nice. Rudo is also fed up with being polite, so he grabs something out of the trash and says he's going to beat the crap out of Zanka. Zanka is shocked to see Rudo using something other than his gloves as a vital instrument, and he finally understands what Engine meant when he said Rudo was a prodigy. But while he's willing to admit that it's impressive, raw talent like Rudo's means nothing unless you've got the skills to back it up. Just then, Rudo realizes that Zanka isn't holding his stick anymore, and when he looks up, he sees it hurtling straight towards him. He manages to dodge it, but Zanka runs up and starts putting a lot of pressure on him. Rudo eventually finds an opening to counterattack, but he is only able to graze Zanka's cheek. Zanka then slams Rudo into the ground and calls him a pathetic excuse for a giver, but then he notices something on his cheek, and to his horror, after taking a sniff, he finds out that it's poop. He then looks over to Rudo, and he realizes the weapon he picked out of the trash was a plunger, and a filthy one at that. Rudo has no idea what Zanka is so freaked out about since he has never seen a plunger before, but he doesn't intend to stop fighting, so even though Zanka is begging for a timeout, Rudo keeps chasing after him. Rudo assumes that whatever this plunger thing is must be really dangerous, so he proudly jumps into the air and swings at Zanka, splattering Doki all over the place. A little while later, Engine returns to check on Rudo, but when he finally finds him, he sees Rudo standing over an unconscious Zanka, covered in poop. They both get into the car, and after explaining the whole story, Engine starts laughing hysterically because he never would have expected that Rudo and Zanka's first meeting would end up with Rudo flinging poop at him. Zanka is pretty much the closest you can get to a spoiled rich kid on the surface, so getting covered in poop was extremely humiliating for him. And Rudo had no idea that he was flinging crap the entire time, so he's ashamed of himself because that's disgusting even for him. Anyway, Engine thinks this was a good bonding opportunity for the two of them, and he assures Rudo that Zanka is the best there is when it comes to controlling vital instruments, so he's going to be a great teacher for him. Zanka feels honored that his idol, the famous Engine, thinks so highly of him. But while he's basking in the recognition, Rudo notices a pair of boots sticking out of the trunk, and Engine tells him that's just Rio. He asks her what she's doing here, so she explains that she just wanted to see the new guy in person. Rudo is a little nervous since he still has almost zero experience talking to girls, but then Rio starts fiddling with his hair because she thinks the color is cool, and even Chua never got handsy with Rudo like this, so he doesn't know how to react and freezes up. And while that's going on in the back seat, Engine says they are heading straight for the cleaner's headquarters. Once they arrive, Rio says goodbye to Rudo, and Engine takes him to meet the receptionist, Semiyu. She has already heard all about Rudo, so she has a good idea of where he came from and what his potential is, but she'd still like to see it for herself. Rudo doesn't understand what she's talking about, so Engine explains that Semiyu's glasses are her vital instrument and they boost her kinetic vision, allowing her to see all kinds of things about a person. Semiyu activates her glasses and takes a look at Rudo, but her vision is suddenly blocked out by a black haze when she tries to look closer, so she gets startled. Engine asks her if something is wrong, but she brushes it off and tells him that Rudo is in good physical shape and he has a good relationship with his vital instrument, but not much skill when it comes to using it, so it's going to take a lot of training before he will be able to activate it on command. Engine is still a little concerned about the way she reacted earlier, so he asks her if she's sure there's nothing wrong, but Semiyu doesn't want to talk about it, so she changes topics and points out that there's poop on the back of Rudo's neck. Engine bursts out in laughter because he still can't get over how funny Rudo was earlier, and since Semiyu is done with her inspection, Engine says he's going to take Rudo to meet their boss. Along the way, he decides to give Rudo a rundown of how the Cleaners organization works. Including all the combatants, sentinels, and supporters, there are around 100 cleaners in total, but with how busy it gets around here, it's rare for all of them to be in the building at the same time. On that note, he asks Rudo if he's ready to meet some of his new coworkers. Rudo asks if this is really a good time for introductions, but Engine tells him it won't take long since he assumes most of the other cleaners will be out on missions. However, he couldn't have been more wrong. Nearly every cleaner in the organization was just hanging out in the break room. He realizes it would take too long to introduce them to Rudo right now, so he says he'll just do that later. After that, he takes Rudo straight to the boss's room, but before Rudo goes in, he wants to make sure he knows he can't just start demanding info out of nowhere. Information is a hot commodity, and it doesn't come cheap, so if Rudo wants to learn anything, he's going to have to tell the boss that he's willing to work for it. Also, as a quick word of advice, he warns Rudo not to ask about the boss's vital instrument because he doesn't like talking about it. And if he's thinking about asking the others here about it, there's no point because none of them know what the boss's vital instrument does either, and frankly, they don't care because they trust the boss more than anyone else. After hearing how much the boss is respected, Rudo wants to make a good first impression, so he opens the door to introduce himself, but to his surprise, the office is empty. Just then, Semiyu walks up behind them and she totally forgot to mention that the boss is out on some business, so he won't be around for a while. Engine had no idea, so he apologizes to Rudo and asks Semiyu if she knows when the boss will be back. But she's got no clue where the boss even went to begin with, so it looks like Rudo's just going to have to sit and wait until the boss gets back. Just then, Rio shows up and she tells Rudo that if he's got nothing better to do, he's free to come watch her work if he wants, and it'd be a great opportunity for the two of them to get to know each other better. Rudo agrees to go with her, so Semiyu gives a breakdown of the mission Rio will be going on. One of the towns near a polluted zone is worried because trash beasts have been approaching its gate recently, and they don't want to take any chances, so they ask the cleaners to come help. It seems simple so far, but Rudo hasn't been following a single word Semiyu just said, so she asks Engine if he actually explained anything to Rudo or not. Engine admits that he may have skipped over a few important details here and there, so Semiyu is going to have to give him a crash course to get him up to speed. Basically, on the ground there are two different types of land. There are the habitable areas known as safe zones, and then there's the trash-ridden wastelands known as polluted zones. And while all polluted zones are dangerous, there are some that are particularly deadly, and these areas are called no man's land. The trash beasts here are so powerful and violent that pretty much any human who wanders in there ends up dead, and to be honest, it's nothing short of a miracle that Engine found Rudo when he did, because he definitely would have died if he was left on his own. But speaking of which, Semiyu asks Engine what he was doing all the way out in a no man's land by himself, but Engine doesn't want to explain himself, so she just moves on. One thing she wants Rudo to take note of though is the fact that whenever he's in a polluted zone, he needs to make sure he's wearing a gas mask because breathing that toxic air in for too long can make you seriously ill. A little while later, Rudo arrives at the job site with Rio and her team, and even though he can't technically become part of the cleaners until their boss gets back and approves him, she wants him to stay close and pay as much attention as possible. Rudo looks out into the distance, and beyond the city wall, he can see an empty wasteland which must be where the polluted lands start. It makes him wonder just how long he was breathing in the toxic air when he first got here, but now that he has seen the cities down here, he is amazed how different everything is from his expectations. Back when Rudo was in the sphere, he always just thought people who were dropped into the hole would just immediately die, and he had no idea that there were actually people down here. For a moment, he wonders if the other spirits are aware of the people down here, but even if they were, they'd probably continue dumping their trash down here anyway. Once he catches up with Rio, he asks her who the other guys here are, so she explains that they are cleaners here to the mission, but they don't have any power, so they mostly handle support. One of the supporters turns around and introduces himself, but when they shake hands, the guy accidentally squeezes way too hard. Rio laughs and tells Rudo the guy is known for his physical strength because he is able to crack trash beasts open with a single punch, even if they can't kill them. Rudo is amazed that everyone here is on such a different level, so he plans to watch and learn as much as he can, even though this is meant to be an easy job. Just then, trash beasts begin to emerge from the polluted lands, so Rio tells Rudo to stand back and watch, but then Rudo sees just how many trash beasts there are, and he's starting to freak out because he wasn't expecting to see so many at once. Rio tells him to calm down since these are just regular trash beasts and they are pretty weak, so they won't be able to put a dent in the fence. Rio was right about them not being able to put a dent in the wall, but then even more trash beasts show up, and these ones look like the kind that'd be able to break the fence. Rudo sees the fence start to budge, so he panics and asks Rio what they are going to do, but Rio tells him everything is still under control. These ones are just slightly bigger versions of the ones from before, and if they play their cards right, they might be able to finish up here early, and then she'd be able to throw a welcome party for Rudo. Rudo asks her how she could be thinking of a party at a time like this, so Rio tells him that if he's going to survive on the ground, and he's going to need to learn the importance of keeping a cool head in dangerous situations. Rudo realizes she's right, so he decides to try remaining calm no matter what as well. But then a giant trash beast makes an appearance, and it's really hard for Rudo to stay calm in the face of that thing. Rio can't believe what she's seeing since this is the first time she's ever encountered a trash beast like this before, so she takes out her vital instrument and she's about to get started. But before she deals with the big guy, she wants to thin out the herd on the ground, so she jumps into the air and activates her scissors before beheading several trash beasts in one go. Rudo is mesmerized by how skilled Ryo is with her vital instrument, but the supporters remind him that even if he's just here to observe, he still needs to be aware of his surroundings so he can protect himself. One of the trash beasts had managed to slip behind him while he wasn't looking, and it is about to ram right into him. But at the last second, the supporter steps in and stops it with one hand. He then crushes the beast's skull and throws it over to Ryo, so she gets her scissors ready and splits it in half when it lands. She asks the supporters to keep it coming, so they get to work crushing trash beasts and then tossing them towards Ryo. Trash beasts can't be truly killed without the use of a vital instrument, but the supporters are still able to crush or disable them to make it easier for Ryo to finish them off. Once most of the smaller ones have been taken out, Ryo decides to go after the big one. And while she's doing that, the supporters go around making sure all the small trash beasts that are left stay out of her way. However, one of the supporters gets caught off guard when a trash beast springs back to life all of a sudden. He is about to be crushed by it, but at the last second, Rudo steps in to protect him. After seeing how well everyone works together, he realized that he's going to need to pull his weight around here if he's going to be part of the team, and that means he needs to have them covered. As Rudo says this, his powers begin reacting with a rod in his hand, turning it into a protective cage, but Rudo has no idea what triggered his power this time because so far it has only activated when he's angry, and he wasn't angry at anyone. The cage begins to crumble soon after, but it bought Rudo enough time for Ryo to show up, and as soon as she gets there, she destroys the trash beast. They're all really grateful that Rudo stepped in to save him, but they still got to deal with the big one. Ryo tried cutting it in half earlier, but for some reason the beast was able to just piece itself back together. It's annoying, but Ryo's just going to have to keep dicing it up until it stops moving eventually. And since it's a new type of beast, they aren't sure what it can do, so a few supporters go to warn the surrounding cities about it, while Ryo jumps in to engage. She stabs into the monster's face, and then goes after the tendrils on top of its head. After cutting them all off, she finds a glowing spot on the back of the monster's head, and it looks like it's pretty important, so she thinks she's just found the monster's weak spot. The beast starts reacting violently, which means Ryo must have been right, so she jumps into the air and slams her scissors right through the monster's head, piercing whatever was powering it and turning it to dust. However, when the supporters ask her what she did to defeat the beast, she tells them that the monster died when she pushed this thing out of its head, so it must have been its power source. But she's kind of hoping she's wrong about it because the thing in her hand is a vital instrument, and if trash beasts are able to fuse with vital instruments now, they have a major problem on their hands. Elsewhere, the man who tried to kidnap Rudo wakes up in a pile of trash, and he is really confused because the last thing he remembers was getting his ass kicked by a spirit kid, so he has no idea how he ended up here. Just then, he looks forward and notices a man sitting on the couch in front of him, and the man tells him he wants to hear all about the spirit kid that beat him up. This was the end of episode 4. Subscribe to not miss the next part.